From Chris Weidman losing 32 pounds in less than 2 weeks, to Conor McGregor looking like skin and bones, these are the scariest weight cuts in UFC history. Starting things off is Yoel Romero. He'd actually be remembered as one of the greatest middleweights in UFC if he had more weight regularities inside the octagon. Yes, he's now moved on to a more natural 205-pound division in Bellator. But still, he had some drastic weight cuts to 185 in the UFC. At UFC 221, he managed to defeat the middleweight champion Luke Rockhold. Well, he won, but at a cost. He wasn't able to leave with a belt because he weighed 2.7 pounds heavier. Now, that's a bummer. What's more, he then missed weight again before his much-anticipated fight against Robert Whittaker. And he'd leave the UFC after 2 more losses. Fighters like Yoel have always been really passionate about achieving their desired body weight. And so was Chris Weidman. It's hard to tell whether fans have seen the last of him inside the ring. But one thing's for sure, he's one of the most professional fighters out there. It's been evident by his dedication to cutting weight to make it to the middleweight. You won't believe that he once lost 32 pounds in just 10 days to compete against Demian Maia. In fact, he briefly moved to the light heavyweight class to avoid losing so much weight. But Dominic Reyes knocked him back down to the middleweight division. Though, unlike Chris, the next fighter I'm going to talk about won in 2 separate divisions without missing a scale once. That doesn't mean he wasn't undergoing some bad weight cuts, though. I'm talking about Daniel Cormier. Despite the fact that he's only 5 feet 11 inches, he's actually a natural heavyweight and spent the majority of his career fighting as a light heavyweight. He said many times throughout his career that his walking weight was between 235 and 240 pounds, but there were times when it increased to over 260 pounds. Clearly, he had to lose over 40 pounds to hit the scale at 205 pounds. He's admitted that the most difficult weight cut was the one before his fight against Anthony Johnson. During the official weigh-in, he missed the scale of his first attempt, as he was 1.2 pounds over the limit. That means he had to go backstage and try to lose it, which is a lot. To everyone's surprise, he returned 2 minutes later weighing 205 pounds. Interestingly, he weighed an incredible 236 pounds on the fight night. This has led to many pros and fans believing that he cheated by putting his hands on the towel. But unlike with DC, the upcoming fighter had such extreme weight cuts that everyone was worried about him. It was Kenny Florian. His weight loss stories are often understated. He's the man who made his UFC debut as a middleweight on Season 1 of The Ultimate Fighter. Later, he had to move down to welterweight. That's because he was too undersized for the 185-pound division. Well, he didn't really stop at welterweight. In fact, Kenny started pushing too hard. He decided to move down to featherweight and was smoked by Jose Aldo in one of his 2 145-pound matches. Yes, he was able to make weight for both fights, but his ghostly appearance at the weigh-ins worried everyone. Even the pros said that it was the last time he'd do so. And it definitely was. He announced his retirement following his loss against Aldo. A weight-cutting scare on weigh-in day is hard to forget. But what happened with Mizuto Hirota is often forgotten. Before joining the UFC, he majorly fought as the lightweight. But it wasn't always the right venture for him. In fact, things got serious before his fight against Rani Yaya in his home country of Japan. The drastic cut to 145 pounds was more than challenging for him. At the weigh-in ahead of the fight night, he barely made the 146 pounds limit. What's worse is the fact that he had to be helped to get on and off the scale. Just watching the clips of him swaying on the scale is quite scary for those who know the dangers of weight cutting. But that's not all for scary weight cutting stories. Another one belongs to Johnny Hendricks. At his peak, he only lost a fight to Georges St-Pierre. Still, many fans believe he actually won. But his immediate downfall was shocking and painful to watch. At UFC 200, he literally looked like a ghost as he failed to meet the 170 pounds limit for a fight against Kelvin Gastelum. He missed weight again at UFC 207. This made him move up to middleweight. Things weren't favorable there either because he, once again, missed weight before a fight night in 2017. He lost 2 fights in a row during the same year and announced his abrupt retirement. If you thought his transformation was shocking, wait till you see the next fighter. He's one of the biggest weight cutters in the UFC history. It's none other than Max Holloway. Ariel Helwani once asked him what his walking weight was, to which he didn't have a direct response. Still, he left some room for fans to believe that his off-season weight is more than 180 pounds. Before the UFC 223, he decided to step on 6 days' short notice to face Khabib Nurmagomedov. That means he had less than a week to hit the target of 155-pound scale. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it. The truth is that the commission managing the event stopped him from losing any more weight because he was looking unhealthy. Later in an interview, he admitted that he was possibly around 180 pounds before the weight cut. Now imagine all the struggle he had to go through to bring it down to 145 pounds. What's more, he weighed 178 pounds on the night of his fight against Jose Aldo. As for Aldo, he was only at 145 pounds. That's completely insane. But James Irvin had an even more dangerous weight cut in the sport's history. Honestly, he's always been known as the fighter who cuts a lot of weight. And his weight cut before the big fight against Alessio Sakara in 2008 is still one of the scariest in the UFC history. During his WEC career, his weight was around 230 pounds. After joining the UFC in 2005, he cut it down to compete in 205 pounds. This was already a huge step for him. He decided to lose even more weight to join the middleweight roster after losing his match against Anderson Silva. This means that he had to lose 45 pounds to hit the required 185-pound scale. To be more specific, he lost almost 20% of his body weight. No wonder he looked totally ripped and drained at the weigh-ins. In fact, he looked so unhealthy that UFC President Dana White said that he wouldn't allow him to fight in the middleweight division ever again. But the next fighter I'm going to talk about had several weight cuts during his career, but he always looked healthy. But he was the complete opposite of it when he tried to hit 145 pounds. I'm talking about Conor McGregor. Weight cutting didn't really play a major factor when he fought at 170 or even 155 pounds. To be honest, he never really had a problem meeting those targets. You may already know he started his UFC career in the 145 pounds division. But when he had to fight Aldo back in 2015, he had one of the most insane weight cuts you'll ever see. He took some extreme measures to lose those pounds. And that's not surprising, because if you see photos from the weigh-in for the fight, Conor looked like a zombie. I mean, it was terrifying to watch him stand on the scale. Those were all of the scariest UFC weight cuts of all time.